ready to survive and advance on the Gruely Crew Sports Network. I'm your co-host, Mike Goodpaster, and of course, we've got the Friday Football Frenzy where we'll pick all the NFL games. We're also going to talk some college bowl games and a little Purdue football in a little bit with our guest. First up, I want to welcome in my co-host, a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, and just generally a legend in the state of Indiana, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Feeling very legendary today. I got one of my best friends along with us today, and another Hall of Famer. So I'm feeling very legendary. How you feeling? You can't be feeling legendary because you're not part of any Hall of Fame, as far as I know, unless there's an Arena Football Hall of Fame.
You know. Okay, as far as you know. So I wouldn't bring it up if I was. But the guy we're going to interview today.
Wait, Mike does the Lawrenceburg Trailer Park have a Hall of Fame? Are you in that?
Yes, the Lawrenceburg Trailer Park Hall of Fame I am in. I was first ballot, too. I went in, I was the first unanimous to get in, too.
You were probably first tenant, too, as well as first ballot.
Yeah, okay. Next up, I don't even know why I talk to you a lot of times, other than a lot of people listen to this drivel. But today, we have a Hall of Famer that actually didn't have to pay his way into the Hall of Fame like Steve Risley did, and he's a member of the Football Hall of Fame. And as we know, a couple weeks ago, Ed Biles, former Houston Oilers defensive coordinator and then head coach, was on the show and explained to us how basketball is played basically by fairies and shorts. But today, we have a true Indiana legend. Played for the Purdue Boilermakers at the end of the 1970s, and he is now the voice of the Purdue Boilermakers. Help us welcome to the show, Pete Quinn. How you doing, Pete?
I am doing wonderful, guys. Merry Christmas.
Now, Pete, don't you think there should be a Hall of Fame for people who have been friends with Steve Risley for more than 6 months also and still friends with him?
I consider my friendship with Mr. Risley an honor. It's kind of fun to have a Purdue guy and an IU guy. They're as close as we are, but we're big rivals, but we've had a lot of fun with the rivalry. I think I've probably played golf with Steve about 50 times, and every single time we played, he tells me that Mackey Arena was his favorite basketball arena because there was great views everywhere because they had no national championship banners to block any views. So he's told me that joke 50 times.
Joke, Pete. I was going to use that in the show.
That's why I did it, because I knew you would eventually say it, so I just wanted to get it out there. Just get it out there right now, and now I don't have to wait for it.
Well, and I guess the great thing...
Pete and I were golfing buddies in what's called an old buddy tournament we had at our club, and it was 4 years in a row. I think we won 2 matches in 4 years, Pete. But we were voted every year the funnest group to play with because nobody believes in the Purdue guy and the IU guy.
Steve's a skilled golfer. I love the sport, but I'm like a 20 handicap and I cheat, so I don't bring a lot of value to the game.
What 20 handicap? Did you improve?
Yeah. No, I just don't post my scores. I shoot over 105.
Yeah, Mike. I played 50 rounds of golf with Pete, and I played about 400 rounds with his wife, who's just the greatest sweetheart in the world. A, to want to play golf with me, and 2, to put up with Pete. Pete, how long have you guys been married now?
35 years in April.
Yeah, we'll be 35 in June. Yeah, we'll be 35 in June.
So I knew we were about the same.
Yeah, I'm a lot younger, so I'm only at like 25.
Well, we got married when we were 10.
Yeah. Well, I got married when I was a newborn.
Yeah, there you go.
Pete, did you play all 4 of your years with Herman? Were you with Mark all 4 years?
Yeah, same 4 years. Mark Herman was the quarterback. I was the center.
Did he have soft hands?
Incredibly soft. He was a very giving quarterback.
I think he moisturized a lot
that's
from what I
often
heard.
considered one of the greatest high school football games ever played in Indiana was Carmel Lawrence Central our senior year. Carmel beat us 50-43. Mark was quarterbacking for Carmel. I was quarterbacking for LC. He threw for like 600 yards. I threw for like 300, but we had Ty Dickerson, who ran for like 300 yards. And you know how they beat us, Mike?
Yeah, but go ahead and tell the story because I've heard it like 27,000 times.
Every team scored every time they had the ball. Every team, there was no defense in the game at all. And we had 2 of the greatest high school coaches in. We had who now have a great football school. Bishop Delahan, Dick Delahan was Carmel, Jared Bishop was Lawrence Central, and they just caught us off guard. The onside kicked us, and they got it, and that's how they ended up beating us 50-43. So, now Pete, you went to Roncalli though, right?
Actually, I went to a little Catholic school called Cecina.
Cecina, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, Roncalli's a Catholic school too, isn't it?
Yeah. So Roncalli,
so
South Indy, and that was Cecina's near east side.
Yeah.
All right, Steve.
Mike?
Are you done telling us how good a quarterback you were? Or?
No, that wasn't the point. I just wanted to know if Mark Herman had soft hands. Mark's a great guy. Mark has been a friend of mine. I mean, I'm not dropping names because he's just a class act all the way, and right out of the cradle of quarterbacks from Purdue. And I just wanted to know if he had soft hands. I'd never got to experience that.
He was a great quarterback, and we were always in the top 20. I think our best season was our junior year. We were 10-2, beat Tennessee in a bowl game, finished 10th in the country, and Herm was a huge, huge part of that. Not a lot of people know his name anymore because it's been a few years, but when he left Purdue, he was the all-time leading passer in the history of the NCAA, and nobody knows that because
Tennessee game was at the old Bluebonnet Bowl, wasn't it?
It was.
And then you
Great
guys played.
We were leading the whole game till the end, and no, Johnny Majors.
No, I mean the year before though, didn't you guys play Pepper Rogers and Wake Forest, or not Wake Forest, but Georgia Tech?
Yeah, Georgia Tech. Then we played Tennessee, and then our senior year, and that was back when there were like a dozen bowl games. And if you were 8-3, you might not get a bowl game back then. Our last year we played Missouri in the Liberty Bowl in Memphis.
Yeah, actually, that was probably the best time for Purdue football. Was that late '70s team? You had the Drew Brees team.
They were the winningest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Woodson was one of the greatest college football players of all time. Never went to a bowl game. Never had a winning season, which is a sin. Mike Allstott, one of the greatest running backs ever, was Purdue's all-time leading rusher. Never had a winning season. Never got to play in a bowl game. So after the Jack Mollenkoff era ended in the 60s, Purdue was pretty dominant when Jack was a coach. Won Big Ten championships. He had a winning record against Notre Dame. He was a great coach. Purdue went on a slide after that, and then Jim Young came in, and for a brief period, Purdue was very, very good, but Jim only stayed for 5 years. And then it really took a downward spiral till Joe Tiller got there, and Drew Brees came in, and Joe took him to a lot of bowl games, had a lot of success, and then it really went off the rails after that. But it's back on, I'm good to say. Jeff Brom is the real deal. I describe Jeff as a perfect combination of he's got the X's and O's, and he's ahead of the other coaches like Jim Young was, but he also is an incredibly evaluator of talent and a motivator and very innovative like Joe Tiller was. And I think he's a perfect combination, and we're real happy to have him. I think he's going to do some pretty significant things here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think he is too. And you can ask Ohio State fans how significant he could be at times. And as an Indiana fan who hates Ohio State, I hate Ohio State more than Purdue because I don't really hate Purdue. But the 49-20 beating they put on was impressive. And the most impressive thing about this season was you guys come out, you lose a close game to Northwestern, you lose to Eastern Michigan, you get beat by Missouri, the team's 0-3. And then he turns it around to where they end up beating Purdue. They are beating Ohio State. They end up in a bowl game. I think he did a great job with this team turning around from that 0-3 start.
Yeah, if you would have told me before the season Purdue would lose to Eastern Michigan, but they'd beat Ohio State, I would have laughed in your face. But that's exactly what happened, and they were close in those first three games. The Eastern Michigan game was just one of those outliers that it was a torrential downpour for 24 straight hours. Purdue's strengths, which I've been doing the radio now for Purdue for 27 seasons, and it's the first time in 27 years I've said that it's an advantage for Purdue on a fast field. Their offense is built around speed. Their defense is built around speed, and that field negated that. They made a bunch of bonehead mistakes, and they were replacing basically their entire defense. They had they had a couple of the stars back, Marcus Bailey, a linebacker, and Thieneman is one of the best safeties in the country. But after that, they had one defensive lineman back. I think they had to replace 8 starters on defense, and it took them a while to gel. But like you said, Brom turned it around and got them to a bowl game. Kind of reminds me a little bit, nice little segue into the NFL, that a lot of people wouldn't have predicted that the Colts would be in a pretty decent spot to make the playoffs after their 1-5 start. But that was one of the best turnarounds I've ever seen at the pro level, is what the Colts have done this year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Steve, you would have to be a genius to, when they were 1-5, predicted them to make a run at the playoffs, wouldn't you?
Yeah, only. I think you're the only person that did that. But
thank you,
Pete. Really, the Ohio State game in the driving rainstorm, was that a big deal? Because don't you guys still have the PAT system, the original prescription?
No, Ohio State was beautiful weather. The Eastern Michigan game, we still had the PAT system at real grass, but the field was very, very slick. And one of our greatest offensive threats, are not one of them, their greatest offensive threat was true freshman Rondale Moore. And we just couldn't utilize the speed that Coach Brom's put into the offense as much as we wanted. And there was a lot of mental mistakes in that game by Purdue, but that was one that obviously you feel very comfortable you should have won. And I think next year's going to be real interesting. I'm looking forward. They open up on the road at Nevada. They've got a pretty decent non-conference schedule with Vanderbilt and TCU. I like how the schedule lays out. They got a couple of tough road games, Wisconsin and Penn State. That I like their schedule next year, and I like the team. They just signed up an incredible, probably the best in the history recruiting class at Purdue. And there's probably about 4 or 5 true freshmen coming in next year that are going to have an immediate impact. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
All right, and you guys, in about a week, have a bowl game, the Music City Bowl against Auburn. What do you think the key to that game is? Because when I look at it, I think the key comes down to Purdue's offensive line against Auburn's defensive line. Auburn's got Nick Coe, who's a sophomore defensive end. He's been great all year, 7 sacks. They got Grant Herman's returning on the edge. I think their ability to get after David Blau, the Purdue quarterback, is going to decide this game.
I agree with that, but the biggest advantage Purdue has in every game is the guy on the sidelines. He really is. He's a football genius. If you give Jeff Brom 3 weeks to prepare for an opponent, I like our chances. So he'll devise some schemes that are designed to get the ball out of David Blau's hands quickly, because that is the concern that you have is a very real one. And he's going to come up with ways to get the ball out of his hands very, very quickly. He's got a lot of misdirection plays that he'll put in. I think it's going to be a very fun game. I think it's going to be one of the bowl games that after the bowl season is over, after the 947 bowl games are over, that'll be one I think people say was a fun game to watch.
Now, how important is this bowl game to Purdue? I mean, are they excited about it? Because you hear a lot of people that, the bowl games so far, who wants to watch Buffalo against Troy? But at least Purdue gets to play against an SEC team, and you get a win there. It's going to give the program more respect.
Yeah, it is. They've already won in some senses because they after that 0-3 start, they got into a bowl. You can tell the combination of the Jeff Brom, the big story, is he going to go to Louisville? Is he staying? That brought a lot of notoriety to Purdue for the second year in a row. Last year was Tennessee. This year was Louisville. The incredible season that Rondale Moore had. We got into a really, really nice bowl game, considering we're a 6-6 team. Auburn was only 7-5, but they underachieved this year. I think preseason, I think they were ranked in the top 10. So they obviously didn't have the season they were hoping to have. Their quarterback didn't follow up with his 2017 season with a season that was comparable. But they're obviously a dangerous team. But it's important to Purdue, like it is for all bowl teams, because they get those additional practices. And so it's important for the development of the younger kids. I think it helps in recruiting because instead of bringing kids onto a campus and they're not doing anything, they can take the kids to the practice and they can see how things are run. Whether they win or not, obviously you want to win. It's all about winning at the end of the day, but it's not going to kill them. Last year, I think, was more important to win because he wanted to show that, he's turned things around at Purdue. And so that was a big win last year against Arizona. It's an exciting game. And it's just a fun team to watch. I just, when I started doing the radio broadcast, honest to God, I was going to do it for one season. I just wanted to experience it. I was just going to do it for a year and then say, yeah, I used to be on the radio. But next year will be my 28th season, and I'm as excited about next year as I've ever been doing it. So he's made it a lot more fun for me. A lot of fun to watch those guys.
All right. You want to talk a little college playoff? Number one, what do you think about Central Florida and their claim to be in this?
Oh, I think you're always going to have that. I hear chatter about we should really have an 8-team playoff, but if we had an 8-team playoff, there'd be a lot of chatter about that 9th team that should have been in there. So I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect system. I think the 4 teams are in it. I think earned it. Yeah, I don't have any complaints. I have a hard time believing that Ohio State isn't one of the top 4 teams, but they, like you said, they got beat pretty soundly against a team that ended up 6-6. So I can kind of get that. I think if they would have lost to Purdue in the first game of the season, by the end of the season they would have been in the top 4. But timing was against them. But I think the 4 teams that are there deserve to be there. I think Central Florida with their resume is certainly a team. If they would have gotten in there, I wouldn't have complained about that. But it's going to be interesting. Right now, I think everybody in the country just assumes Alabama's just going to walk through both games and win it. But that's why they play the games. I think a lot of people assumed Ohio State was going to spank Purdue, and Purdue reversed that team. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs. I love the playoffs. I'm glad they put the system in, and I'm happy with the 4. But I hope they don't tinker with it too much. They got a really nice product right now, and there's always going to be a team on the outside looking in that's going to complain.
All right.
Let's look at the 2 games. What's your take?
Go ahead. Pete, I disagree with you. I think 8 teams is the number because, the last I've heard, the last proposal that I've heard thrown out there, it's who knows who threw it out there, but they're talking about 5 power conferences each getting a team in, and then 3 at-large bids. Because there is the argument for Ohio State. There's the argument for UCF going 25-0 and not getting a shot ever to play. I mean, in football, that's a rarity. I don't think Alabama hasn't gone 25-0. And to not have a shot to play for it, and if they get dusted, they get dusted. And then there's the issue of does Notre Dame belong or not? Do they play such a passing schedule that it's easy for them to walk through undefeated, not playing a conference championship? So, I would think 8 would be the raw number that you would want. And I think that would clean up a lot of mess because you get beyond 8, and then you're saying, I can make an argument why you shouldn't be here. Because I know in the job that I did for 25 years, we used to find reasons to kick people out when we would get so many qualified people to play. We would start finding reasons to eliminate people. And I think at 8, you start getting there. At 4, you still have reasons that there are major conferences, the Pac-12, the Big Ten are not represented. Do we continually put 2 teams from the SEC in? Are there more than 2 teams qualified for the SEC? I think 8's the better number.
Oh, you know what? It wouldn't ruin the game for me. I like the 4 as far as Notre Dame is concerned. If you would have looked at their schedule 5 years ago, I don't think anybody would have thought it was a patsy schedule. It's just the way it worked out. They schedule these things year in advance, and who would have known that, Southern Cal, USC is going to struggle like they struggle, things like that. Notre Dame's undefeated. I think it would have been a travesty not to have them. If anything, if I were to argue any of the teams, I think Ohio State obviously did not play well during the Purdue game, but they had an impressive schedule, and I think they've got an incredible amount of talent. That would be the fifth team for me, and maybe even substitute them with Oklahoma. But a lot of people are writing Notre Dame off, and I'm not. Notre Dame's got a lot of talent. They've got some amazing talent and a lot of key positions. And Brian Kelly knows what he's doing. You can't go undefeated in today's environment without knowing what you're doing. And they've had some. They're going to have several weeks to prepare, and we'll see what happens.
Why doesn't that count for Central Florida?
Central Florida's schedule wouldn't compare to any of those 4-team schedules.
Notre Dame's schedule's not that great, though. I don't see a bunch of big-time teams they beat. They beat Michigan, but Central Florida did beat 2 or 3 teams that were ranked in the top 25 at the time. Last year they beat 3 top 25 teams, including beating Auburn in a bowl game, who was ranked in the top 10, and in a few weeks earlier had beaten Alabama. If this was a one-shot deal where UCF was 12-0 off of this, I would be more inclined to agree with you. But 2 straight years, and they've overcome losing a handful of guys that get drafted in the NFL last year. They lose their head coach. They're still undefeated. The conference they're in's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And then on top of that, they lose their starting quarterback. And then it seemed like they played even better after that. And Memphis has one of the best running backs in the country. Memphis is a good football team. And I think Memphis will prove that by winning their bowl game rather easily. I think they play Wake Forest or Georgia Tech, somebody like that. But I think it has to be 8. And I think the reason it is because I don't think the powers that be want to include a UCF and have to split some of that money.
No, the money that they would be splitting, though, they'd be splitting money that they don't currently get because that adds more games. But it's like I said, it wouldn't ruin the game for me. But just to finish the conversation on UCF, if they expanded to 8, they'd be in it because they're basically ranked 8th. But there's other teams besides those 4 ranked ahead of them. I think Georgia's 5th, Ohio State's 6th. You look down the line, they're still 8th ranked in the country, and that's how you judge who gets into the playoffs.
Yeah. I would just rather have more teams because I don't really trust the guys that vote for the thing to begin with. And
you can make an argument for that because some of the voting is kind of crazy. But I think my biggest problem with it is they're still college kids, and just adding one more game. The national championship game. What would that be? Their 15th game of the season. You're almost to an NFL season now.
Yeah, but the thing is this: NAIA in Division III run with 32 teams.
Well, you know what? And I've heard that said before, and that's absolutely correct.
And the thing is this: there's no reason to have 11. You could have 10 regular season games, or just 11. Cut out the conference championship game and let the 2 SEC schools in to make them happy. And if you were to start playing this at the end of November, you're done sooner than if you're doing it this way. Everybody, and let's face it, once you get to about December 15th on, for that 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, the semester is over, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most part, for most schools. Yeah, it would. So. If you guys want to go ahead and make that change, go for it, and I'll support it. I forgot about the conference championship games, though. That would mean that the teams that make it to the finals, if they had a conference championship, that'd take them up to 16 games. That's just, and I know what you're saying about Division III, et cetera, but that's just a long football season.
Well, even the FCS or whatever it is that has the championship series, they're 32 teams.
Yeah, I know.
That's an extra 5 games.
All your arguments are great. I like the playoffs, so maybe I'd like it with 8, but I'm pretty comfortable with the setup right now.
All right, so Alabama, Oklahoma. Who do you like in that one?
Alabama. I think Alabama's the real deal. I think anybody can win on any given game day. Ever since forever. But that lesson, I still remember. I was walking into Toledo Stadium and it was Joe Tiller's debut. And as I'm walking through the parking lot, everybody and their brothers watching one of the biggest upsets in history of Michigan got beat by Appalachian State. So you just never know what's going to happen. The Ohio State-Purdue game was a monumental upset. If they would have beat them by a single point, it would have been an upset. But the way they beat them was huge. Oklahoma's going to be a big underdog in that, but they got a lot of kids with talent. And if the ball bounces their way, they can win. But I would assume at this stage Alabama's going to get through that one.
Yeah, I would favor Alabama. I think it's going to be a closer game than people think. I think Oklahoma's going to be able to score on them. I just don't think they're going to be able to stop them. What about Clemson and Notre Dame?
I've become a Notre Dame guy this season. I kept waiting for them to lose. Every week I thought this is going to be the week, but they always found a way to win. And I know it was the opener of the season, and I know that they were home, and they didn't win big, but I think beating Michigan was pretty impressive. Everything that happened to Ohio State in the Purdue game, it was the opposite in the Michigan game. Everything clicked for Ohio State, and that put obviously a black eye on the Michigan season. But Michigan was a very, very dominant football team this year. And Notre Dame took them on full strength, and they won that game. And then they managed to go undefeated. Obviously, Clemson had an amazing season as well. I just, for one reason or another, I just feel that Notre Dame's going to pull the upset there. I think we're going to have a Notre Dame-Alabama final.
All right. What do you think, Steve? Notre Dame plays Alabama?
Yeah, we've had this conversation many times, Mike. That I, like Pete, just kept saying, when is Notre Dame going to become Notre Dame and choke on a game that they should have won handily? And they didn't do it this year. And I just think that creates a little different aura with that program. I think that's going to be the best of the semifinal games, because I think Alabama's going to probably have their way with Oklahoma in the end. And I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, you got a great defensive front with Clemson. You got a solid offense, and I know you don't like Brian Kelly, but he's twice now been named Coach of the Year in college football by whatever.
Hey, remember this? What I always bring up: Marvin Lewis has been named Coach of the Year in the NFL twice too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's just between the NFL and college, but I like Notre Dame. I mean, I just think it's a weird thing. I'm like Pete. It's why you put the ball out on the field, you kick it, and you punt it, you throw it, you pass it, you run it, and you see what happens. And it looks good on paper, but it's not. So I like Notre Dame. I like Alabama. And if I was betting the farm, I'd bet on Alabama in the championship game, but I'm going to be rooting like hell for Notre Dame.
Plus, I'm Irish Catholic, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's a sin if I don't pick them.
Well, we don't want to have that. We don't want to go to hell.
Yeah, you don't want to get me in trouble. Yeah, that would be a total bummer.
So I do the same thing, so it's fine with me. So I'm all with you, Pete.
I think Clemson wins the game. I think you're looking at a team that 21 of the 22 starters have played in the college playoffs before. I think Brian Kelly's a really good football coach, but I think Dabo Swinney is the only guy that even gets close to Nick Saban. And I just think the defensive line is so good. I do think this. I think Clemson's weakness, and it's not a huge weakness, is their secondary. If Ian Book can get time to throw the ball, I think they got a chance. But they have to be able to run the ball, they have to be able to spread the field out, and they have to be able to throw the ball quickly, because Clemson's defensive line is really good. I think it's Clemson and Alabama in a national championship game. But what do I know?
I think a lot of people agree with that. I think Notre Dame's a couple of touchdowns underdog. It's more of a feeling than anything else. And they got a cornerback that I've been following since he was in high school, because one of my buddies coached him in high school, Julian Love. I have this suspicious feeling that Julian Love's going to do something special in that game. A pick six. He's going to do something that's going to have an impact on that game. So we'll see.
All right, let's transition to the NFL, because Steve loves to talk Colts, and we'll get to it in a minute. But I want to let you know, there's a disclaimer. This is Week 16. Nobody that has been on this show as a guest picker, including former NFL football coaches, former NFL players, have ever beaten me and Steve in the Pick'em segment. So this is
Hey,
probably
Mike,
the opportunity of a lifetime for you, Pete.
Mike?
Steve?
Can I ask Pete one more college question before we transition into football? You didn't give me that opportunity to ask my final question, which I always ask.
All right,
Pete,
go ahead.
Mike and I have had this debate quite a bit, and it's kind of one of the things. How much does how well your team travels, meaning your fan base, factor into these bowl games? Is it a important part of how these bowl teams matchups are selected, or is it really not part of the factor?
It depends on the bowl, in my opinion. Yeah, and a lot of they always have, but especially now because the fans have been hungry for this. They just went through a lot of seasons that were absolutely miserable. It's hard to even watch. They sold out their allotment in record time. They asked for an additional 3,000, sold that out. There's probably going to be, I'm going to guess there's going to be 20,000 fans. In the smaller bowls, the minor bowls, I think it plays a bigger role because getting fans in the stands is critical for the success of these bowls. And I think the fact that Purdue was located, because they had their pick, they could have grabbed Iowa, they could have grabbed Wisconsin. They took Purdue, and I think that absolutely played a role in it. They knew that Purdue was going to travel well. It's an easy drive. I think it's probably about a 5-hour drive from West Lafayette. Got a huge alumni base in Indianapolis. It's a 4-hour drive. I know that without any exaggeration, I keep in contact with a lot of former players, and I sent out an email just to see who's coming. I sent it to about 150 former players, and I think there's going to be about 80 former players back for this game. So it's going to be extremely well attended, and I can almost guarantee you, without knowing it for certain, that the fact that they anticipated Purdue drawing a big crowd had a lot to do with them choosing Purdue over Wisconsin or Iowa.
Yeah, Pete, and Pete, we live about 25 miles from the Rose Bowl, and Tia and I have a room decorated in Purdue colors for you and Susan. No, we do. Actually, we do. We do have black.
Wait a second, because you told me that you had a room decorated in IU stuff if IU went to the Rose Bowl there for me.
Well, I don't live in a trailer, Mike. I have more than one room in my house.
Oh, okay.
So lighten up, Alice. So, but Pete, we live. Tia drives by the Rose Bowl every day to go to work, and I'm
spending the second week of January in Southern Cal on business, so I'll make sure we hook up when I'm out there.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, Steve, did you have any more questions?
No, I guess I'm done.
Okay, we'll start off.
I go watch Kardashians now. You guys want to finish this out?
Well, you got to pick the games so we can beat the guy that we're going against, so we can do this all year long. First up,
I take the Colts.
Washington Redskins at the Tennessee Titans, which means Steve's probably going to stupidly pick the Redskins, hoping the Titans will lose, so it'll help the Colts, right, Steve?
Actually, in my pool, I picked the Redskins to win this game, and not because of my heart, but because I just think the Titans are such an up-and-down team. I think things are falling in line for the Colts, so I think it's just going to work out. I picked the Redskins, but Titans are playing better football right now.
All right, Josh Johnson's the starting quarterback for the Redskins, so I'm going to take the Titans. What do you think, Pete?
I've got the Titans. I'll be rooting for obvious reasons for the Redskins. Plus, I'm a big fan and buddies with Ryan Kerrigan. I always like to see the Purdue kids have success, but I just feel like Tennessee. They're at Tennessee. Tennessee's pretty strong at home. They're a solid football team. Love to see Washington pull it off, but I think it's going to be Tennessee.
All right, next up, we've got one of the bigger games of the week, Steve. The Baltimore Ravens at the Los Angeles Chargers.
I think the Chargers are a juggernaut. I don't think that they don't seem to be showing much weakness. Philip Rivers is having, if not for Drew Brees, an MVP year. But I think Drew's going to walk away with that. We've had that discussion before in the show too. But Ravens seem to be struggling a little bit. They're finding ways to win, but they're winning, by finding it in the last 30 minutes of the game. Chargers are smooth. I got Chargers in this game.
All right, Pete.
Chargers. They're 6-1. Actually, they're not. They're 5-2 at home. They've won 4 in a row. I agree with Steve. I think this is Rivers' best season. They seem to be clicking. They're playing with a lot of emotion. And this time of the year, as you guys know, it's teams that win tend to be the teams that have managed to stay healthy the most. Nobody's healthy right now, but I think they're relatively healthy, and I like them at home.
Yeah, and it sounds like they may be.
I do have a newsflash too. I think actually, from what I just heard out here in the local LA stations, that the Chargers may have actually sold out the 30,000 seat StubHub Arena soccer field for the game.
Well, hopefully it's not 20,000 Ravens fans and 10,000 Charger fans.
But we don't know that. That's a good question.
That's the good thing for them, though. If they have to go on the road, they've been on the road all year. Because even when they played the Bengals, I think there was more Bengals fans there than it was Charger fans. I'm going to take the Chargers also. I think they could be the best team in the NFL right now. If not, at least they're the best team in the AFC. Next up, Pete, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Dallas Cowboys. Do the Cowboys implode like always, or do they get through this?
I don't know. That was a little bit shocking what they did against the Colts, or what they didn't do against the Colts last week. I think it's been. I saw the date. I don't remember if it's been years and years and years since they were shut out of a football game.
2003.
They're strong. 2003. That was a shocking game to me last week. I don't know how they're going to respond, but I know that they're very, very strong at home. And when you lose a game like they lost, it has an impact. And sometimes, they go into a shell and they start questioning themselves. Sometimes they get pissed off and they come back strong. I think they're a strong team despite what happened to them last week. I think they'll want to show that to everybody. I'm not sold too much on Tampa Bay, so I'll go with Dallas.
All right, Steve.
I agree with most of everything Pete said. Everything Pete said, actually. I'm going to add, I think what happened to the Cowboys last week was more of a product of the Colts than it was the Cowboys. So therefore, I think the Colts just manhandled them. I mean, the Colts are they're in the top 10 power rankings now. I think Colts are a better football team than their record dictates at this point in the season. They may be working in the year, but I still think what happened to the Cowboys last week was more of a product of how well the Colts played than how bad the Cowboys played. I think Cowboys are fine. I think they get into the playoffs. And from there, we get into the coaching issues with Garrett and the ownership issues and what Jerry will try and do in the playoffs, and then they're a mess again. But Cowboys are still a very good football team. They've got a lot of talent. Ezekiel Elliott's one of the 3 or 4 best running backs. Prescott, like he said, he doesn't do well throwing people open, but when people are open, he hits them. And I still think Amari Cooper was the best move that football team's made in the last 5 years. Along with Randy Gregory.
I think the fact the Bucs are 1-6 on the road, they're out of the playoffs. They have no chance in the playoffs. There's a lot more motivation on the side of Dallas.
Yeah, and the only thing is, though, with Winston and Fitzpatrick, you're liable to get 5 touchdown passes or 5 interceptions. You never really know what it is. I think the difference in this game is the Buccaneers' defense just isn't very good. I think Ezekiel Elliott will have a field day. I think Dak Prescott will have a field day running and throwing. I expect the Cowboys to win, but if they don't, I don't think they win the next week at New York, and I think they're out of the playoffs because as a Cincinnati Bengals fan, I can tell you when things go bad, they usually really go bad for teams like the Bengals and the Cowboys. But I'm going to take the Cowboys. Next up, we get the Minnesota Vikings, who still look positioned to be a wild card team at the Detroit Lions, who've been up and down all year long. I'm going to go with Minnesota, and I think Minnesota could be a dangerous team come to playoffs, especially with Dalvin Cook now able to run the ball, Pete.
Yeah, I agree, and I like Minnesota. I grew up in Indianapolis. We didn't have pro football when I was a kid, so I had different teams, and I usually liked the teams that had great centers. And they had a Hall of Famer named Mick Tingelhoff.
Mick Tingelhoff, yeah.
So I always followed those guys, and I think they're having a strong season, and they're going to be playing on the road, but I like Minnesota in that game.
Steve?
Vikings. Yeah, I think Vikings are. Yeah, they're a better football team. Yeah, they'll win the game.
All right, here we go, Steve. I'll let you start off with this one. This is a terrible game that will be really hard to pick. We've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. No Cam Newton. Matt Ryan's still playing for the Falcons. Who do you got in this one, Steve?
Is Cam out?
I think that they've decided to sit him the rest of the year.
Really?
Yeah.
I've not heard that. I've not,
He was hurt last week, I guess we found out after the game.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I have to stay with the Falcons because I think the Falcons are one of the biggest underachieving teams in the NFL. And I still keep waiting for them to explode and play the football that we're used to seeing in the last few years of the Falcons playing. So it's hard to bet against the Falcons because I think they're very talented. They're much more talented than the Panthers, although Christian McCaffrey is having, another potential MVP type year, if not for Drew Brees. But yeah, I got to go with the Falcons on this one.
Yeah, I think the Falcons' problem is they've been decimated with injuries. Them and the Bengals both.
Right.
I think have got like 20 guys on IR. Pete, you agree with Steve on Atlanta here, or are you going with the home team?
I'm going to go with the home team. I think it's a really, really tough game to call. Carolina's kind of an enigma out there a little bit,
Yeah.
but they're clearly better at home than they are on the road, and they got to win at some point. They haven't won. I think they got a string of like 6. Haven't they lost like 6 in a row or something like that?
Yeah.
And at some point, the pride's going to kick in for these guys. So I like them at home. I think they're 5-2 at home, and losers of 6 straight. I'm just going to go with them out of gut instinct more than anything else.
Yeah,
I would go with the Panthers too, except if Cam Newton, because this is a game tailor made for Cam Newton. I mean, this is showcase time for him. The game's not relevant. He can go do his own thing, but if he's not playing, I think that
here's my deal on that, Steve. I'm a Purdue fan, and so I've got a history of every time somebody brings in a backup quarterback, it scares me. And that was one of Purdue lost a game this year with a guy that started in his first game, and he looked like an all-pro. And I'll never forget one of the first games I ever played in. We're playing Notre Dame, and we're heavy underdogs. This is Jim Young's first year. Mark Herman's a true freshman starting at quarterback. I think we're 30-point underdogs, and we are really dominating Notre Dame at halftime. Not score-wise. We were up like 14-3 or something, but we were beating them. We were physically beating them. And then the second half, their number one quarterback, Rusty Leash, got knocked out. They put in their second-string quarterback. He got knocked out. So they put in this third-string quarterback, a junior named Joe Montana. And Montana came back and threw 3 touchdowns. They won that game, went on to win the national championships. And then I was also at the game. I couldn't wait when the Colts played New England because their starting quarterback got hurt, and they were putting this low draft pick kid named Tom Brady in for his professional debut. So backup quarterbacks scare me.
Touche. Well played.
All right, but I don't think that Taylor Heinicke is going to be Joe Montana, so I'm going to go with the Falcons. I could be wrong, but the other thing that people forget is when you're facing a guy for the first time, you have no film on him. It makes it a lot harder to coach the game against him, too. That's why you'll see a lot of guys come out and play 1 or 2 games really great, but then once you got film on them, you can do stuff to stop them. Next up, a huge game. The Houston Texans at the Philadelphia Eagles, Jim. Who you like? I just called you Jim, Pete. But all right.
Oh, that's all right. I thought you were talking to Steve, so no problem.
Actually, I've called Steve a lot worse.
I'm going to go with Houston, and I don't have any good reason to do that other than I've seen them play a couple of times this year, and I think they're a strong team. I think they're better than their record, and they got a great record. And we'll see. I think that's going to be one of the games I'm going to try to watch.
All right. What do you think, Steve?
I'm first off, I don't think this game's really relevant to the Colts because I don't think the Colts can catch them.
It's relevant to the
they
NFL,
mathematically
Steve.
can. They mathematically can. I get it, but I think the Colts are playing for a wild card berth at best. So I don't think this game is
no question.
To think that the Colts have a chance to win the division outright is silly at this point in time. But the fact that the Texans is a dome team for the most part, they're playing in Philadelphia. The weather's crappy on the East Coast right now. They got Foles back in. He's had a game to get his crap back together. I think his team rallies, and I think the Eagles make a hard run at the playoffs now because they've got more pride. They've got more – and the Texans have – the Colts took care of them. Texans are not playing great football at this point in time, so I'm going to go with the Eagles.
Yeah, but the Texans haven't really played great football all year. They've done enough to win most of the time.
Well, they found ways to win. I get it. But I think the Eagles right now are just surging a little bit right now, and the game's at Philadelphia. It's a weather game. It's going to be a weather game.
All right. I like the Eagles because I like the Eagles' pass rush against the Texans' offensive line. I think they're going to be able to get after Watson as long as they can get after him from the edges, keep him in the pocket. I think they've got a really good chance to win the game. I also like Alshon Jeffrey against the Texas DBs. I think the Eagles, I don't know that they're the better team, but playing at home, the Eagles have more to play for right now because the Eagles need help to get in, and they can't lose or their season's over. So when I look at that, I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles here and hope that the Dallas Cowboys lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just because I got some friends that are Cowboy fans, and they can be kind of overbearing sometimes. Next up, we're going to let Steve go first because the New York Giants will travel to Indianapolis to play the Colts, who are now 8-6 and 2 wins away from probably making the playoffs if these win these last 2 games. Steve, what's your take on this game here? Because to me, it's the old NFL trap game. You came out, you played out of your minds last week, you got a huge win. Now you're going to play a team that's only won a few games this year. Do the Colts go ahead and get this?
Well, I'm picking the Colts. I've never ever in my life betting or gambling or not on gamble, but playing in a pool, I've never not picked my home team to win. I believe in my team, unlike some of my counterparts who don't think that their bungles are any good and should be.
No, see, I'm not an idiot. Why would I pick a team if I don't think they're going to win?
Well, okay,
it has nothing
I'm a
to do
loyal
with
fan.
for
Call me an idiot if that's a loyal fan, what it is. But what scares me here is that this is the time of year the Giants always seem to start playing better football. I still think Eli Manning is a very dangerous quarterback. They've played better of late, the Giants have, and I think the trap game scenario is spot on. But I just think Andrew Luck is dialed in right now. T.Y. Hilton, he and T.Y. Hilton, he's just got a great tight end. Marlon Mack things are going right for the Colts right now. And same kind of way I kind of felt about Notre Dame was when's it going to fall apart? And once they got it started, other than the Jacksonville game, which really, truly, on the second and third last play of the game, they had a chance to win that game. If Luck didn't throw a pick, instead, they win the game 7-6. He's down in the red zone. So, I think the Colts dominate this game, take it, and they keep marching.
Yeah, I think they dominated because of the simple fact you got no Beckham, which is going to make it harder to move the ball. But the biggest thing to me is last week, the Giants were absolutely manhandled on both sides of the ball against the Tennessee Titans. The defense allowed 215 yards rushing, 170 by Derrick Henry. The pass rush didn't even get close to getting the Tennessee quarterback Marcus Mariota. And when I look at that, I don't see how the Giants win this game. What do you think, Pete?
Giants are one of the few teams. I think there's only 2 NFL teams that have a better record on the road than they do at home. They're 3-4 on the road. But everything you guys had just said, I agree with. I think Andrew Luck is a hands-down comeback player of the year. If he doesn't get that, I don't think anybody should ever get it. And I think Colts have a perfect storm. First couple of games of the season, Andrew Luck was clearly not in form. He is now. I think he's playing as well as he's ever played. I think him and Frank Reich are a perfect team. I think Frank Reich should be considered for Coach of the Year after that start and where they're at now, depending how the rest of the season plays out. But I like that combo. I like the Frank Reich, Andrew Luck combo. and they're playing with a lot of confidence and coming off a dominating win like that. You're right, Steve. It could have an impact on them, and they could take the foot off the gas. But I think they're a very, very strong team at home, and everything's clicking right now. And that would be a huge upset, I think, if the Colts didn't pull that one off.
Yeah, and the thing that stands out to me about the Colts is this, Pete. It's the fact that I think you've got the defensive rookie of the year in Leonard at linebacker. And I think this. I love Saquon Barkley, but the offensive rookie of the year to me should be Quentin Nelson. And when you can draft two guys, each on a separate side of the ball, that are that good, that bodes well for future years.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if this is true. You guys probably know. Is it true he did not make the Pro Bowl?
No, he did not. Leonard did not.
That to me is just a joke.
Yeah, but the Pro Bowl's a joke. So
I don't think either one of them made it. Did they, Mike? Neither one of them made it, did they?
I don't even know about Nelson. I don't really pay attention to the Pro Bowl because it's turned into a touch football game that's irrelevant anyway.
I mean, like I said, the Pro Bowl in the NFL is well, in the NBA All-Star game is not much better by nature. Probably the Major League Baseball, probably the best All-Star game of any professional sports. But I don't think it's any big crime to not make the Pro Bowl.
No, I can tell you this.
That's a popularity contest voted on by idiot fans.
As a Bengals fan, 5 years ago, Tyler Eifert made the Pro Bowl. He got an injury in that game, and he's been hurt ever since. So it's a meaningless game. It doesn't really matter. And since we talked about the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals will travel to Cleveland to play the Cleveland Browns. And the question, Steve, is can Hugh Jackson continue to work his magic on the Bengals?
Yeah, definitely. I saw I read something on Twitter. I was starting to read it, that how they're going to find a way to honor Hugh Jackson, the Bengals, are at the end of the season.
No, not the Bengals, the Browns. And that was a joke article from the Cleveland
Browns.
And that was on the GrulinTruth.net.
City, like a one-way ticket back to Cincinnati, or
I can't wait for that day when all of a sudden Hugh Jackson, with his 3-34 record, is now the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
That's coming sooner than you think, probably.
Oh no, I expect it any day now. So you like the Browns in this game?
Yeah, I think the Browns are just they're in a high. They're like on a sugar high. You know, they're not a very good football team necessarily, but they're overachieving. They're riding, you know, their rookies, Chubb and Mayfield, and they're having fun. The town's enthusiastic. They're winning on emotion, and they're not playing strong opponents. Obviously, the Bengals are not a strong football team. I think they go to Cleveland and they celebrate another victory. And the city, and I'm really happy for Cleveland because, you know, losing LeBron, and that's a great win for the city. And I'm cheering for the Browns. It's a game I want to watch.
I'm cheering for the Giants now this week.
What?
I'm cheering for the Giants this week then.
Well, that's fine. Go ahead.
You're an asshole.
You're a loser.
I thought we were friends, and now you're going to cheer against my team. I'm actually cheering against my team too because I want to make sure Marvin Lewis gets fired. But I think the Browns win. The Bengals have no Dalton, no A.J. Green. Joe Mixon may be out now. Pete, who do you like here?
Definitely the Browns. I'm enjoying their success. It's been a long time. I got a lot of good buddies in Cleveland. I had a really good teammate named Paul Hanna that played a few years with the Browns, so I've always been a little bit of a Browns fan, and it's exciting times for them. This will take them to 500. This would make them 7-1, and it'd give them a winning streak of 3. And I think they're hungry for victory there, and they're at home. So I go with the Browns.
All right, next up, the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. Steve, can the Patriots rebound?
Yeah, I think they win this game.
All right, Pete.
Move on.
We are.
Patriots.
Yeah, I'm taking the Patriots too. Next up, Packers at Jets. Does anybody care? I'll take the Packers. What about you, Jim?
Pete, and I'm going to go. And that's okay, because I kept bringing up my coach, Jim Young. Grew up a huge Pack fan. I became a football player because in the 5th grade, my uncle bought me a book called Instant Replay by Jerry Kramer, and I started following the Packers when I was a kid and decided not only that I wanted to play football, but I wanted to be a center. So I've always been a Pack fan. I look at the Jets. Jets 0-7 on the road. They're at home, but I think the Pack's going to go and have their way. They're not having the season they expected, but they'll win this game.
Yeah, I read that book when I was little too. Loved it, and then a couple
Isn't that
years
a great
ago.
book?
Yeah, and a couple years ago, I actually got to interview Jerry Kramer on one of our shows on The Grueling Truth, and he was a great guy.
Yeah, their center was Jim Ringo, and they had so many great personalities. They had maybe one of the first cerebral quarterbacks in Bart Starr, and probably the most storied, famous NFL coach until Belichick. I mean, they were just the real deal, and just love seeing them have success.
All right, Steve, Packers, Jets.
You know my theory on this, and I think Aaron Rodgers has become a big play game quarterback, not a big play season quarterback anymore. I think he has a big game. I think the Packers, I just don't think you're going to see consistency out of Aaron Rodgers. Not in the current Packers configuration. I agree.
This would be the Packers' first road win if they win this game.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be closer.
True. I did not know that, but yeah.
I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think, too, because the Jets at home have been able to put up a fight a few times, so you never know.
You got to wonder how much Aaron Rodgers just kind of given up and written off the season, too, and said, the hell with it. I got Danica Patrick waiting back at the apartment,
Okay. Next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Miami Dolphins, Steve.
I like Miami in that game.
All right, Steve?
The Dolphins, yeah.
Should I mention my favorite Purdue Dolphin? That'd be Bob Greasy.
Oh, it has to be. I coached an arena football team in Evansville, Indiana, and everybody down there were all Dolphin fans. I didn't realize until later that, he was from Evansville. All right, next up, Bears at 49ers. Everybody got the Bears?
Yep.
All right,
yep.
Steve? Okay. Rams at Cardinals. Everybody's got the Rams,
I think
right?
Nagy, we talk about Frank Wright. I think Nagy's probably your NFL Coach of the Year.
Yeah. Nobody saw that coming. Did they, Steve?
Yeah, I think you did, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike, you're a genius.
All right.
You just get your guest's name right, would you please?
Hey, you know what? You've gotten so many names wrong in the last year and a half that I've known you that I don't even want to hear it from you.
But I'm an idiot basketball player from Indiana.
Rams at
I'm expected
Cardinals.
to do that.
Rams at Cardinals. Everybody's got the Rams.
I got Rams.
Yep.
I got the Rams.
All right.
I got Rams.
Me too. Next up, Pittsburgh Steelers at the New Orleans Saints. I'll start this off. I'm going to take the Saints because I don't think the Steelers' defense is going to be able to deal with them. Jim? That's your name now, Steve. No, come on. Jim. Risley?
That's me?
Risley.
I'm
got
Jim
you
now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, good. I got the Saints. I think they're playing for home field advantage, and I think they have more meaning. They have more talent, and they have a big meaning to win this game. It's not a blow-off game for them because they want to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So I'd take Saints.
I think they've already got home field, don't they? Or close to it.
I don't think they locked it.
Well, they haven't locked up home field. They have to win one more to lock up home field throughout the playoffs. And the day I pick against Drew Brees is that's not going to happen. I always go with Drew.
All right, I'm going with Drew also, and Jim Risley did. See, Jim Risley sounds more manly than Steve Risley.
There actually is a Jim Risley.
That actually sounds like somebody that's famous.
Yeah,
there actually
Jim
is
Risley.
Jim Risley.
You know what we need to do? You need to legally change your name to Jim and then wear a cowboy hat.
Okay.
Ride a horse. Next up, another big game: the Kansas City Chiefs at the Seattle Seahawks. Pete, we'll start with you.
I'm gonna go with the visitors. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs.
All
right, Jr.
I'm gonna go with the Seahawks. I just think they're playing in Seattle. Chiefs are kind of doing what the Chiefs do. They start off strong, and this is a moniker of this football team. They bust out, and this is not just a Mahone thing, and then Andy Reid, for some reason, like I said, I'm praying to God the Colts cut into the playoffs and draw the Chiefs in the first game and go to Kansas City because we're probably going to win that game. If we go to San Diego or New England, we're screwed.
Well, you're definitely screwed if you go to San Diego because there won't be a game there.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We can't beat those teams, but we find a way to beat the Chiefs. And I think the Seahawks, I think Russell Wilson is another quarterback having a really strong end of the season. I like Pete Carroll as a coach. They're playing at home, crappy weather again. I got Seahawks in this one.
All right. There's no way there can be a playoff game in San Diego, Steve. All right.
Okay.
There's no team in San Diego. All right. I'm going to pick the Seahawks. I really like Russell Wilson.
LA doesn't own the Chargers. We don't want them.
All right.
We want them to go back to San Diego.
Now it's we. You've been there for a little over a year. Next up, we have a game that means absolutely nothing. Pete, Broncos, Raiders.
Broncos.
Steve.
I think the Raiders win this one.
I'm going to go.
Well, at least we had a few that were different.
I'm going to go Broncos.
I just think the Raiders are going to bust one out here, and Gruden's going to justify himself by beating a hapless Broncos team who's now put themselves right out of the playoffs, basically, for all intent and purposes. And, I just think Broncos are, yeah. I got the Raiders. It's been an upset.
Steve, if I ever did this for a living, and I don't bet on sports because I understand sports, so I don't bet on it. But if I were looking at these games and games that don't matter, don't have any playoff implications like this one, I would take a real hard look at how many starters are playing in their contract year, because that does have a huge impact on these games. If a guy's still trying to negotiate a contract, he still wants to perform, and I haven't followed either team closely enough to know that.
Yeah, neither do we. But what the hell? That's why we try to bring on people that don't follow that stuff. It makes it easier for us to win. Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Steve, anything else you want to discuss or ask?
No, just, thank you, Pete, for coming on and joining us and giving us your insight. Fun talking Purdue. And what everybody thinks about this, between Indiana and Purdue people, the rivalry is not as great as it is, but it's a fun rivalry. I mean, some of my best friends, like Pete Quinn, are Purdue people. And my wife and I enjoy being around Pete and his wife more than any other couple we really know. And we miss them dearly from not living in Indianapolis. So it's a fun rivalry. It's not an ugly rivalry like us in Kentucky, because us in Kentucky, we can't stand each other. And, that's a different rivalry. But Pete's always a class act, 28 years broadcasting. Pete, thank you for coming on and taking the time to do this with us. Love your insight, love your stories. And I feel like we just played 18 holes of golf. I shot 78, you shot 133.
Yeah, that'd be about normal.
Yeah.
I will see you soon, my friend. I'll be out there in January. I'll give you a call next week. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to driving down to San Diego if I can meet up with you.
Sounds good, buddy.
Thanks, Pete.
Gentlemen, have a very Merry Christmas.
All right.
You too. Give my love to Susan, Pete. Talk to you guys soon.
You got it. Same with you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Steve, did you watch Duke and Texas Tech at all last night?
No, I caught the very end of it, but no, I did not see the game.
That was a great basketball game.
Unfortunately, didn't know it was on. I forgot that it was on.
That was a great basketball game, and Texas Tech is for real.
Yeah.
I mean, they held Duke under 70 points, which I didn't think anybody could do.
Mike, I still am getting back to the theory that I just think Duke is overrated. I mean, but I don't know anybody that can beat them.
Yeah, we do. Texas Tech could beat them. Texas Tech is very well coached. They missed a few shots there in critical situations, but it was a 69-58 game that was much closer than what the score would indicate.
Right.
I think there are teams.
Yeah.
I mean, Gonzaga's already beat them. Jarrett Culver's a stud, put up 26 points, 25 points yesterday. Duke is very talented, but I still think a team that plays defense, a team like Texas Tech, a team like Michigan, could give them problems in the long run.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about this with Brian when he comes back and we start talking college basketball again. But I just don't think this is a year where there's a clear-cut favorite. I think Kansas is slightly overrated.
No, I think there's a clear-cut favorite amongst most people, and that's Duke. But I don't think there is.
I think they're beatable. Like you said, I think Duke is very beatable. And there's years you go into it when you get a strong Gonzaga team a strong North Carolina team or 1 year a strong Kentucky team that ends up until they beat themselves. Now, at first I thought Duke was a team that could only beat themselves. Now I think that they're a team that can be beaten. And from what I've read, and I did not see the game, but your assessment of it sounds exactly what I've read about, is that they could have gotten beaten last night. And they didn't beat themselves. They could have gotten beaten. So it tells me there's more parity in college basketball right now than ever. So thank God for Adidas, Nike, and Under Armour spreading the wealth and making sure that every team is well funded. And the NCAA is still getting their fair cut. And, parity is a good thing.
All right, and tomorrow night, me and Steve will be back with Colin Hartman on the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show right after the game, somewhere between 8 and 8:30 tomorrow night as the Indiana plays the Jacksonville Dolphins. Also, you can go to thegruelingtruth.net, hear our Inside Boxing Weekly Show from last night with John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Pricer, and myself. Check out the shows we did earlier this week with Brian Rolfe on Survive and Advance, talking college basketball, Anthony Savino talking football, Oliver Luck talking XFL, and Trevor Harris talking CFL. So make sure you check out all of the shows on thegruelingtruth.net. Follow us at Twitter @GruelingTruth.
Hey, I had a question for you. I always do this. You never say, Steve, before I say where we can be found, do you have a question? You start doing that so I don't interrupt you. Should we be asking Oliver Luck a little bit more about the NCAA when we're talking to him and find out what, he's a brain trust there.
This is the thing.
I know he did, but should we be asking, as good investigative journalists like we think we are, should we be asking him more about what the heck their thought process is in their daily life?
Well, I would say this. If you were to do that when he comes on to talk about the XFL,
he'll never come on again.
He'll just hang up. And the thing is this. He doesn't work for him anymore. And he probably signed a contract that said when he left there, he probably couldn't talk about it. So there's probably not much you could get there. What we need to do is get the NCAA higher-ups, one of them on the show, to answer our questions. But that'll never happen.
Oh, like they're going to be truthful with us, aren't they? They're going to tell us exactly, here's what we tell you, and here's what we really mean. You think that's going to happen?
No, it'll never happen.
No. So we just continue to look at the NCAA as an absolute enigma. It's amazing to me that this whole deal with the shoe company thing and with Patino has kind of vanished, quietly disappeared. We're into college basketball now. They've quieted all that talk down. They're back to being the money-making machine they are. Tournament play or league play starting up now in all divisions here right about now. And you're just going to see everything be redirected back to Duke and Texas Tech and not anything about the trial. I haven't heard anything about the trial. Have you? Since the first salvo.
No, they're waiting for the next trial
swept under the rug entirely?
They'll make it go away. They always do.
Yeah, to me, it's like it's swept under the rug. I'll research it. I don't think you can find anything new on Facebook or on
there's nothing.
Google or anything. So it's just kind of all been just totally shut down.
All right. Well, we will be back on Monday at noon. As always, you can hear us every Monday through Friday on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you hear sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Pete Quinn, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.